This is the VRURC 30,000 mAh power bank with the model number T3016. I'm gonna unbox it quickly. Okay, so there's a cable that comes with it, which is USB-A to USB-C. And there's an instruction manual. And a quality check. Pass. This is the power bank itself. The advantages of this power bank is that it's really cheap and also relatively light and small in relation to its capacity. And it has a lot of different port types for both charging it as well as powering other devices. The disadvantages of this power bank is that its maximum output is around 20 watts, which might not be enough for powering some devices such as laptops or cameras, but phones should be fine. For example, in order to run Olympus cameras from USB-C power delivery, the power bank must be compliant with revision 3 version 1.0a in order for that to work. I'll test it on the Olympus camera as well, so that you know. So just to go through the spec of this power bank, its model number is T3016, and it has a capacity of 30,000 milliamps or 96 watt hours, and it's made from a high density lithium polymer battery, and it weighs 476 grams, and its dimensions are 16.5 centimeters by 8.9 centimeters by 2 centimeters. It has 3 USB-A ports, 1 USB-C and 1 lightning port, as well as a micro USB port on the side. The first 2 USB ports, they're for output only, and they provide 5 volts at 3 amps, but it has an intelligent identification system, so you can provide a lower power if it's necessary. So 15 watts of power out of the first 2 USB-A ports. The third USB-A port is also output only, and it supports quick charge version 3.0. So it provides 4.5 volts at 5 amps, or 5 volts at 4.5 amps, or 9 volts at 2 amps, or 12 volts at 1.5 amps. So 18 to 22 watts of power. The USB-C input for charging the power bank accepts quick charge and power delivery 3.0. So it can accept 5 volts at 3 amps and 9 volts at 2 amps. In terms of output, it also outputs quick charge and power delivery 3.0. So it can output 5 volts at 3 amps, or 9 volts at 2.22 amps, or 12 volts at 1.67 amps. So around 18 to 20 watts of power is the output from this port. There's a lightning port here. That's only for input, so for charging the power bank itself. And it supports power delivery 3.0. So it accepts 5 volts at 2 amps and 9 volts at 2 amps. On the side of the power bank, there's a micro USB port. So that's for input only, so for charging the power bank only. And that accepts quick charge 2.0 and quick charge 3.0. So it accepts a voltage of 5 volts at 2 amps and 9 volts at 2 amps. To charge the power bank, it takes about 10 hours using quick charge or power delivery 3.0. So that's 9 volts at 2 amps. And 14 hours if you use 5 volts with 3 amps as your power source. It has some LEDs here which indicate the level of power that's remaining on the power bank, and on the side it has a button. So I just press the button to see the LEDs. So it looks like the power bank came charged, because I haven't charged it yet. So one of the things is that if you're using quick charge with the red USB port here, then if you plug in something else, then this port will stop providing power as quick charge. It will just fall back to a lower voltage and current. So if you want to get your maximum output from this power bank, you should only use one port, and the red USB-A port is the one which can provide the maximum amount of power at 22.5 watts. And for the USB-C port, it's around 18 to 20 watts. So the USB A port, which is red, that's the one which can provide the maximum amount of power for charging your devices. So that's the one to use if you need to charge your phones quickly or you want to charge something with high power. And I suspect that's why they've provided this USB-A to USB-C cable, because I assume this cable will support the latest power delivery requirement. Because sometimes if you use a cable which doesn't support power delivery, then even if your power bank supports power delivery at a high voltage and current, the cable will be the bottleneck, so you won't actually get the maximum output from that. So just to compare it to the Anker one, so this is the Anker PowerCore III, and its exact model number is A1284, and it has a capacity of 19,200 milliamps or 71.04 watt hours. The Anker power bank is made up of 6 batteries internally, and each of those have 3,200 milliamps. It weighs 422 grams in comparison to the VRURC one, which weighs 476 grams. So the VRURC is slightly heavier, but it has a capacity of 30,000. So the capacity is substantially more than the Anker one. In terms of dimensions, you can see the dimensions here. So the Anker one is definitely thicker, and the Anker one is marginally taller, but it's less wide. So the exact dimensions of the VRURC one is 16.595 centimeters by 8.9 centimeters by 2.03 centimeters. Whereas the Anker one is 16.89 centimeters by 7.92 centimeters by 2.24 centimeters. In terms of power output, the Anker one can output 60 watts of power combined from all the ports, whereas the VRURC one can output 22.5 watts. And in fact, with the quick charge, if you are using quick charge, using the USB port that supports that, which is the red USB port, which is the later version of USB, then if you plug in other devices into these ports, the quick charge will stop functioning as quick charge, so it will drop to a lower voltage, whereas this is not the case with the Anker one. So I think the Anker one can provide around 45 watts of power through a single port, and that's only for the USB-C port, whereas the VRURC one can only provide around, I think, 20 or 22.5 at most. So according to the Anker specification, the USB-C port can provide 20 volts at 3 amps as well. So that's 60 watts from a single USB-C port. Although in the reviews that I saw of this power bank online, people said that it can only output 15 volts at 3 amps from the single USB-C port. But even that is 45 watts, which is more than enough for, I think, most laptops and cameras. In terms of ports, this is the Anker one. It has 2 USB-A ports, which obviously have lower voltages. The maximum output of the USB-A ports on the Anker is 5 volts at 2.4 amps, whereas the USB-A ports on the VRURC one is 5 volts at 3 amps. So this one provides higher output from the USB-A ports. And that's just these two. So if you consider this one as well, then it provides even more, because it provides 9 volts at 2 amps or 12 volts at 1.5 amps. So in terms of the USB-A ports, the VRURC one is obviously better because it provides more power and there's 3 of them. But in terms of the USB-C port, the Anker one can output around, I think, 45 watts, whereas the VRURC one can only output around 20. Another advantage of the VRURC one is that it has a lightning port for charging the power bank. So this can be useful if you don't have access to a charger and then you have a lightning, someone else has a lightning charger that you can borrow. So you have that option to charge the power bank with that. Also, on the side of the VRURC one, you have a micro USB port. So you can use that to charge the power bank as well, but you can't output anything from it. So in terms of the variation of options that you have with the VRURC one, that's obviously much better than the Anker one, but the output on the Anker one is more with the USB-C. So the Anker one has these lights. If you press it, they will turn on and you can see the charge. I don't know if these are visible here. Yeah. And they indicate how much charge there is left. And with the VRURC one, you have these LEDs. I mean, I don't think either way makes a big difference. Those are basic things. So, okay, so what I want to do now is try it on an Olympus camera and see how that works. Okay, here I have the Olympus EM1X, and I'm going to use a USB-C cable, plug it into the Anker USB-C port, and then plug it into the camera. Okay, so as you can see, the battery icon disappeared on the camera, which means it's being powered from the USB and from the Anker power bank. So I'm going to take it out of the Anker power bank, and I'm going to plug it into the VRURC one. And see what happens. So you can see that it detected the voltage, which is 9 volts at 2.22 amps. So I don't think the camera will work with that. I think the camera needs 9 volts at 3 amps. Yeah, so I don't think the camera will get past this. So I'm going to try something else. Unplug it from the power bank and see what happens if I plug it in with the USB cable. So this will go into the USB-A port on the VRURC power bank, and then plug this into the camera to see if that works. Okay, so the camera is checking the voltage, and based on how long it's taking, I don't think it's going to work. Okay, so the conclusion I draw from that is that if you have a device which requires a lot of power, like the Olympus cameras, or a laptop, then the Anker power bank is better, particularly one that can provide high level of output. So this one can provide 60 watts in total, and I think 45 watts from a single USB-C port. But if you want a higher capacity and more options for ports, 3 USB-A ports, Lightning port, USB-C port, micro USB port, then the VRURC one is a better choice. Another thing the VRURC one has is it has this texture here, which is easier to hold it without it slipping out of your hand. And I don't know if I mentioned, but the cost of this Anker power bank was 6 times the price of this. So I could buy 6 of these VRURC power banks that have a higher capacity and more ports for the price of one of these Anker ones. So the only reason to buy the Anker one over the VRURC one is if you want to use it to power your laptop or a camera that requires a particular USB power delivery version or a voltage. But other than that, in all other aspects, the VRURC one is better. So it has more ports, 3 USB-A ports, USB-C port, Lightning port, micro USB port, it has a larger capacity. The dimensions and the weights are roughly the same, and it costs 1/6 of the Anker power bank. The prices fluctuate quite wildly, so I wouldn't really consider the price a factor when buying one or the other one. It's more about the features that you need. If you need a larger capacity and more options and more practicality in terms of the ports, then the VRURC one is the better one. If you need the high output power, then the Anker one is obviously better. Anyway, let me know if you have any questions or if you want me to go into more detail about any of the things that I mentioned.